For the second part of the video, we're going to see an example like you're going to do in your homework tonight. So your homework instructions are going to say, write the quadratic function in standard form and sketch the graph. Identify the vertex, axis of symmetry, and x-intercepts. And you may need to pause this to write all those instructions down. And we're going to do f of x equals negative 3x squared plus 6x minus 1. Again, you may need to pause. So they want us to write this in standard form. Right now, this is in general form. In order to put this in standard form, what we'll have to do is, as you know, the standard form looks like this. F of x equals a times x minus h quantity squared plus k. This is standard or vertex form, which is the form they want us to write it in. Well, if we talk about general form, what we have is ax squared plus bx plus c. And as you can see, the only thing they share in common is a. So far, we do know what a is equal to. And so if we were writing this in standard form, then we would have f of x equals negative 3, because that's what a is, times x, this is squared, and then we don't know what h is, and we don't know what k is. And because we don't know what h or k is, we can't put symbols in here yet either, because if k was negative, then this is going to be a negative or a minus, whatever the number in, and depending on h, this minus might stay or it might go. So we need to find out h and k, which is the vertex. Well, back here on our previous page, we learned that we can calculate the vertex using those coefficients of x squared and x. The vertex, we can find the x value of the vertex, which happens to be the h, by doing the opposite of b over 2a. So if we wanted to know what h was equal to, it's the opposite of b over 2a. So b is 6, so the opposite of 6 over 2 times a, which is negative 3. So we have negative 6 over negative 6, which is 1. So our value of h is 1. So when we put it into the formula over here, it's going to be a minus 1. Well, then I need to know what k is. And so to figure out what k is the y value of our vertex. So when we have an x value and we want to know the y value, then we can take that given x value and we can plug it into the equation. So what we want to do is we want to find f of 1. That's the fancy way to write that, f of 1. So f is the function negative 3x squared plus 6x minus 1. And then we're going to put 1 in whenever there's an x. So we're going to square first. So we have negative 3 times 1, which is going to be negative 3. And then we can multiply 6 and 1. And then we can add all these together and we end up getting 2. And so our k value is 2. So now we can go up here and write down what our k value is. So now we're in standard form, which is the first part of the assignment that they wanted us to do. They wanted us to identify the vertex. Well, we can do that now. We did it over here, 1 and 2, and we can look here, 1 and 2. They also want us to identify the axis of symmetry, which is just x equals whatever the x value is of our vertex. And the last thing they wanted to know is what are the x-intercepts. So as you know, when we calculate x-intercepts, or maybe you don't know from the looks of your test, when we calculate x-intercepts, we let y equal 0. So you can either take the original equation they gave you, or you can take this new one, whichever floats your boat. I think I'll take the, I don't don't know what you guys would do. I think I'm going to take this one. It doesn't matter. If you do use the other one, once you get it set equal to 0, if you were to set this equal to 0, you'd have to factor, which it wouldn't factor, and so you'd use the quadratic formula. But I'm going to do this one, and then I can just isolate this power of 2 part by subtracting 2 over. And if you don't like my way, then you can just do the quadratic formula with the other one. Dividing both sides by -3. Getting rid of that power of 2 by taking the square root of both sides. So we have the square root of 2 over the square root of 3, because when we take the square root of a fraction, we take the square root of the numerator and denominator separately. And then we can rationalize that. So that's from chapter A. So we multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. So we get plus or minus the square root of 6 over 3. Move the 1 over by adding 1 to both sides. And of course, we can't combine radicals with non-radicals. And so your x-intercepts end up being 1 plus or minus the square root of 6 over 3. Now, I again chose one to show you that was a little more challenging than the ones you're going to have in your homework. The ones in your homework, you can probably pretty easily factor a lot of those if you take the general form and set it equal to 0, or you can stick with using the standard form. It's up to you. The last thing they asked you to do, so let's see, they asked us to write it in standard form, boom. They asked us to calculate the vertex, boom. They asked us to say the axis of symmetry, boom, and the x-intercepts. The last thing that we have not done yet that they asked us to do was sketch the graph. So we're going to sketch the graph here. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the vertex, which is over 1 and up 2. Now I know a couple of things. I know that since A is -3, I know that my parabola is going to open down. And I also know it's going to be wider than normal. I know that I could use a calculator here and calculate what this is. Let's see, the square root of 6 is probably 2 point something. So this is like 2-ish, 2/3. So 1 plus 2/3 is about 1 2/3. It doesn't make it wider, it makes it narrower. I'm like, why does that not make sense? So 1 2/3 is right about there. And then 2/3, 1 minus 2/3 is like 1/3. So right about there. It doesn't have to be exact, it's a sketch. So there it is, opening downward. So for your homework, you're gonna have to do all of those parts. I'll kind of put it up here so you can again stop it if you need to.